Good afternoon, or good morning, or good night. I don't know, wherever you are. Hello, my name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And it is a pleasure to have you all join us today. It's going to be a really great show. It's going to be memorable, it's going to be fun, it's going to be heartwarming, it's going to be all the things a good story and a good show should be about. But before we get started, and before I introduce my guest to you, I want to say hello to Amnan, who's very busy. I don't even know if he can say hello to me.
I
Okay,
can't
he
talk.
can't say hello. He's got a lot of things going on, but that's okay. So let me just remind everyone that during the show, you're more than welcome to call in anytime you like. If you're by a phone, you can call in at 919 518 9773, or you can Skype in with us on voice. That's at computers, that's plural, number two, K voice. And you can join the show anytime. And then also, we have a chat, a live chat going on. So please feel free to put your name in on the little line. It says nickname, whatever name you want to choose, and you can ask questions. You can, just talk to everybody else that's in there. It's fun, and we love having you. So today's show is it's an amazing story, and let me tell you what, I've heard all kinds of stories, and I have been listening and promoting stories for years. And this one is going to be one of those that I will never forget. So my guest today is the author of North of Normal. Her name is Sia Sunrise Person. So let's welcome her to our show today, to our Breaking Free stage. Here's her book. Here you go. And let's welcome Sia. How you doing, Sia? Oh, hello?
Hello?
Hey, how are
I'm,
you?
I'm great. Thank you, Marilyn. How are you?
I'm great. So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
And we have a lineup of people who are waiting to talk to her too. So before
Yay.
we welcome all of them, I want Sia to just she's got a great story. And so I'm going to ask her just to kind of relay it to us, and then we're going to get into it much, much deeper. So, Sia, you were brought up with a counterculture family with a mom who was a teenager. So, bring us into your story.
Okay. Well, my family is from California, and in the 60s, they decided that they wanted to live off the grid. My grandfather was a real idealistic sort of man who had a dream of kind of escaping society altogether and going to live somewhere where there were no rules and no government and really no one to answer to but our own family. And the communes were one thing, but he really just wanted to have us, our family, and to go to a very remote location. So my mother happened to be pregnant with me at the time. She got pregnant when she was 16, and my father was not in the picture. Um, and so my grandfather said, "Well, we're moving to Canada." So off we go, and we move into the wilderness. And that's where I lived off and on for the first 10 years of my life. My mother, became involved with boyfriends from time to time. So we would sort of go off and, have crazy adventures with them and then end up back in the wilderness again. And the whole time I was kind of like, wow, my family is pretty crazy. And I had a really deep seated craving for a more normal life, even though I didn't have much to compare it to because the wilderness was kind of, all I knew. So when I finally moved to the city, which was at age 9, I decided I wanted to be a model. So at the age of 13, I took off and became a model, went to New York and Paris. And um, yeah, that's most of the story.
Well, let's go back a little. Well, first of all, I got to ask you just now. So, when you took off to be a model, did you take off by yourself?
Yes, I did.
All by yourself?
Yeah, well, my mother wasn't exactly, she was a very, very free spirit. And she thought, if I'm happy, if I'm doing what I want, then she's happy too. She trusted me. She never worried about me. She was very, she thought I could take care of myself. And for the most part, I did. I went off into the big world when I was 14. But I always returned because I kept up my schooling. But yeah, I was quite ready to leave my mother and her crazy ways behind by then.
So you grew up in the wilderness in
Yes,
teepees, right? Is that what I read?
that's right. Canvas teepees.
And how old were your grandparents at the time?
My grandparents were in their mid 40s. Actually, I think I calculated that my my grandmother would have been the exact same age that I am right now when they decided to move into the wilderness.
How fascinating. And so every day was a different adventure.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's an understatement. I mean, living in the wilderness with really no connection to the outside, other than some summer visitors who would come and stay with us for a little while in the summer, and then they'd take off when it got too cold because it was very cold. I mean, we're talking about living under canvas in minus 50 degrees Celsius weather. And we're talking about bears and cougars, and I fell through the ice. I almost drowned. I had many, many close calls, and things got even crazier when my mother decided that we were going to take off and live with one of her boyfriends, Carl, and we ended up on a crazy crime spree, stealing from cabins, living in abandoned cottages, and just lots of craziness, trucks catching on fire, cops chasing after us, growing pot, escaping, him getting arrested, my mom and I living in basically in a nylon tent in the middle of the wilderness for a few months with no supplies. I
Wow.
mean, it was crazy.
It was crazy. And you're a mom.
I'm a mom. I have 3 young children.
And so I mean, there's so much to talk about as far I think we're gonna jump around a lot.
That's
And
fine.
yeah, so there's so much to talk about. So as a mom now, how are you as a mom now? And how did you know how to even be a mom?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's a question I get a lot. And I think that for most people, me included, mothering, parenting is just a very instinctual thing, and I've never really questioned my ability to parent. Uh, However, I'm aware that people who come from a background like mine, where there are a lot of challenges, tend to either repeat their parents' mistakes or go the extreme opposite. So I really do try to kind of, walk the line and stay, right in the middle, not being extreme either way. But certain things like I really do try and encourage self-sufficiency in my children. I'm very, affectionate and very protective of them, of course, but I also want them to find their own way and get out into the big world and not be too coddled. And that's not real life. I want them to be prepared for real life.
Is there anything that scares you?
Oh gosh, of course. I mean, something happening to my children or my family or my friends, that really scares me. But no, not too many other things. Spiders.
Spiders. Oh my God, spiders. I mean, you must have seen a lot of spiders when you were in the wilderness. That's for sure.
Yes, but luckily Canada, we don't really have poisonous
Oh,
spiders, so not much to worry about. But man, do they freak me out.
oh my gosh, I bet. So day to day, like, give us a typical day for you as a child. You know, what did you do?
Well, there were a lot of chores. I mean, if you're living in the wilderness, you are dependent on no one but yourself for your survival. And so the day would start, I would get up, and my mom, she wasn't much of a parent. She was, her own needs came first. And so from a very young age, I sort of started looking after her. And I remember we would get up in the morning and it would be really cold in the teepee. And the first thing she would say is, "Can you go and warm up the footstone for me?" We used to have these big rocks that we wrapped in flannel, and we'd heat up the rock in the wood stove, pull it out, wrap it in the flannel, and then we'd put it down by our feet to warm our feet up because it was so cold. So I would get up out of bed and I'd warm up the footstone, and then I'd run outside into the meadows and just run free. I had my stick horses. I didn't have really many toys. I had a doll and a book, and everything else was stick horses and rocks and forts that I would build out of branches. And that's what I did all day. I played and I helped a lot with chores around the camp. I would haul water from the river. We had a yoke and just balance the two buckets and carry it into camp. I'd help my grandmother and my mother with the cooking and the cleaning. We'd bathe basically once a week in a big tub, either outside in the summertime or in the teepee in the wintertime. And we would have to melt lots of snow to get the tub water. And lots of, my grandfather hunted a lot for our food and gathered. So we would spend a lot of the time in the summertime gathering mushrooms and berries. And I would go hunting with my grandfather for grouse and caribou and bear, and we'd go fishing. And yeah, that was just kind of my life. It was all about keeping things running around the camp.
So what if you look when you look back, what was the thing that you loved the most?
I will never forget just the feeling of freedom I had running around in those meadows on my stick horses, really having not a care in the world. And that was short-lived, unfortunately, because when I was 5, my mother and I left the wilderness with her boyfriend, and things got a lot uglier after that. But the memories I have of just, that freedom and knowing that I had my mother all to myself and my grandparents all to myself. And of course, that all changed when, because my mother was, always trying to find a boyfriend. But those are my best memories.
So you went to school at how old were you when you first started going to school?
I started going to school when I was 6, and that was kindergarten. My mother had tried to get me into grade 1, but the school wouldn't accept us because we didn't have a permanent address at the time. We were actually squatting in a cottage. So she put me in kindergarten, and I went for about 3 months. And it was during that time that I really figured out that, wow, my life is not like the other kids. And I was not like the other kids. I was too tall. I came from the wilderness. I brought peanut butter and garlic sandwiches to school. My clothes looked like they were out of a trash bin. I didn't know how to ride a bike. I didn't know how to swim. All these sorts of things. And that's when I really started to have a craving for a more normal life. So after those 3 months in kindergarten, we moved again, and we moved to one of the Gulf Islands here in British Columbia. So I was actually able to attend first and second grade at a normal school. So that was good for me.
So there's so many. I mean, there's so many things to talk to Carl to talk to C about. And we have a friend of hers on the line waiting, but I'm going to ask her in just a minute because there's still so many things I'm curious about. So, I I know that I read that there was nudity and there was pot. I mean, you grew up with that from an early age, and your clothes had, you know, potholes,
Yeah.
basically. Not
Well, they smelled like pot smoke all the time,
they.
that's for sure.
And did you engage early in smoking pot? When they did they give you
Oh,
pot?
God, no,
They
no, I
didn't.
was not interested
They
at
don't.
all. I really wanted to be completely different from my family from the very, very youngest of ages. But you know, it was crazy. I mean, when you have a mother who is in bed beside you having sex with a random guy, and this goes on and on and on throughout, your teens. Like, I couldn't get away from it. Pot was every day, all the time, 24/7. It felt like. The smell of my childhood is marijuana. It really is, and there were no boundaries, no discipline, no guidance, no authority. It was just, I was just able to go off and figure things out for myself. And what I figured out was that I did not want to be like these people. So it took me a very, very long time to get interested in drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But I did eventually in my 20s, and I went off the rails for a little bit there, quite badly. But it was really my past catching up with me that I had not dealt with.
You know, it's interesting because I think you have such an amazing life to hang on a billboard because so we all tend to we are born into something, maybe nothing like Sia, and maybe for some kids certain things are worse or whatever, certain whatever it is, and we jump around on that continuum until we find, hopefully we jump around on that continuum, hopefully till we find a place of comfort where we can call it, okay, I'm good here, this is a place that I can live from. And I think that's
Yeah.
what you did. And I but there was something inside of you or something outside of you that was always connected to something greater.
I believe that. I do. I mean, how else can you explain, being 3, 4 years old and looking at my family and going, wow, these people are really weird. Like, wasn't I supposed to be born somewhere else into some other family? But what you say about, finding your place, Marilyn, is so true. And, I've done this, like looking for my normal, which was here, just like trying to find it. And it's quite ironic when you think about it, because my family was so obsessed with having their freedom that they forced their freedom onto me, and their definition of freedom was nothing like mine. So it took me decades and decades to find my own, what I consider to be my own freedom, and that happens to be the suburbs. Living in suburbia with my kids and my husband and my friends, and I drive a minivan, and that's my freedom.
It's interesting because the show, of course, is called Breaking Free. So,
Yes.
most of the time I think of freedom, breaking free from, you know, being,
Societal expectations,
yeah,
right?
not from freedom.
Yeah. I
you
know.
know, that's like a whole nother show for me. We'll have to talk
Yeah.
about that later because really, breaking free from freedom.
Yeah.
How cool
That's
is
what I
that?
had to do. And that's why, and I would question myself so often, going, what's wrong with me? Why is this not okay with me? Why does everyone else in my family love this lifestyle and I can't stand it? I want out so bad.
Mhm.
It took me a very long time to sort of figure out what my gauge or for normal, for acceptable behavior really
Yes,
was,
yes,
because my family always taught me that it was a certain thing that didn't feel right to me.
right. Well, these are some really deep conversations when you talk about what's normal. You
Yes,
know,
absolutely. Of course. Well, everyone, I think, knows for them, what is normal for them. And they have that little compass, that little gauge inside themselves that tells them when they're, on the right track, off the right track of what their normal should be. And it also depends person to person, because some people don't want normal. Some people go out of their way to create drama in their lives, or to just, do something completely different from what everyone else is doing because that's their calling. And it was just different for me. My normal was pretty normal. I mean, by everyone's standards, I believe.
and I guess just like we said, you had to break free from freedom. Well, who's to say what normal again? Who's to say how we identify what normal is for your grandparents and your mother? You know, you can look at it and go, "Excuse me," but for them, that was their normal for that for that lifetime.
Yeah, and they looked at me when I was a teenager in my 20s and said, "Excuse me, what are
Yes.
you doing with your life? That's crazy. Why would you want any of this?"
Who are you?
Yeah, who are you?
Who are you? So I want to talk to you more, but we have a very good friend of Sia
Yes.
on the line. And I just want to tell everyone who's listening that we're having a little problem with Skype, so we can only take one call in at a time. So I'd like Carly to come on and chat. And then I know we have other friends and maybe some relatives of Sia that are waiting for the opportunity to share, to talk about her. So hold on and let's talk to Carly. And Carly is a old friend of Sia's from when she first got into school. Is that right?
Well, Carly's my oldest friend. We've been friends since fifth grade. And the only time in my life when I actually lived in a house for a long, extended period of time was when I was living in Calgary with my mother. So from fifth grade until graduating high school, I lived in the same house with my mother. And I started this new school, and I was horribly shy, horribly withdrawn, feeling like a freak, still feeling like the freak from the wilderness. And on the first day, the teacher asked Carly to show me around the school. And we've just been, the greatest friends ever since. She's seen me go through a lot.
Wow. Carly.
Hi, Marilyn.
Oh, Carly, I'm seriously about to cry. Honestly, to be blessed with such a friend.
Well, I feel like I'm the one who's blessed.
Well, tell
No, I
us.
am.
Well, Well, now we're three of us are, and I'm not too, and everybody that's listening, you are all, you know what? You're at the right place at the right time. We're all being blessed.
Yes.
So, Carly, talk
I'm
to us. Tell us about Sia.
Well, Sia is one of the most remarkable people I've ever come across, met, had the pleasure of spending time with, living life with. She's she's just the most resilient person I know for sure. She sets very high standards for herself. She works very hard. I don't know anyone who works harder. She achieves everything that she sets out to do.
So you became friends. How did you see her make a change from this this wilderness child who comes in who's scared, probably scared, of a lot of things, and meets you, and then what kind of changes did you see her make? How did you see her make those changes?
Well, she was always a certain kind of person. I didn't see this little wild wilderness child flourish into, the swan that she became. She always had that in her. I mean, we were both always kind of a little bit different, um, but we definitely had our family obstacles, and I think we
Yeah,
had a.
Carly had a difficult childhood too,
She did.
but
But I
very different.
Yeah, different, but yeah, difficult, but different. But when you come from, I mean, when we met, we didn't know anything about each other, and I was kind of like, oh, I got to show the new girl around. But it took about 5 minutes for us to become best friends, even though we had such different upbringings.
Wow. And so, Sia, is there anything you want to ask Carly or talk to Carly or ask her to share?
I just, Carly's just been such a rock for me over the years. And, she's the one person who, well, not the one person, there have been others, but I've just never felt any judgment from her. And I've gone through some very tough times. There was a time when I left my second husband, and long story, it's in the book. But I really didn't have a dime to my name, and I had a small son, and I didn't have a car to drive. She stepped up, her and her husband gave me their second car to drive. They supported me. And she's just one of the most loyal friends I could hope for. And I really do think that her friendship helped me to accept myself and to feel like a person who could actually integrate into society, because she was sort of a popular girl. And I was like, if the popular girl likes me, then maybe I'll be okay. And so she really gave me confidence just by being my friend.
So, Carly,
Yeah,
really,
that's pretty
yeah. I
nice
mean,
stuff there.
yeah. I mean, it's really amazing because when you come from some kind of adversity, is there something? I mean, I know my childhood it was on some level it was great, but then there was also lots of confusion, lots of pain, fear. So when you look back and you think to yourself, and I don't want to pry into your childhood, but what is it about having the kinds of challenges that you had, or the kinds of challenges that Sia had, to make it? I mean, what is it that it took to make it for you that you could share with somebody who's listening?
Well, when you grow up with a background of fear, I think that people are just, I believe that you're born resilient. I mean, you do learn street smarts and some of these other survival techniques along the way. But I think I was blessed enough to be born resilient. And then meeting Sia, and we had each other as support. I mean, we were inseparable. We were always sleeping over at each other's places. We were together all day at school, after school. So we really we had each other, and that made a huge, huge difference. Like, I don't know where I would be if I didn't have such a good, close friend that I could trust and completely rely on and just be myself around all the time.
Yeah.
And I just want to add here quickly too that, I at the time when I was later when I was a teenager and Carly and I were friends, my mother was such a huge embarrassment to me because, my friends would come over and she'd be like, "So you smoking pot yet?" Or, she'd be topless or she'd smoke pot in front of them, want to talk to them about sex. And so as a result, I just, brought nobody over. I was just way too embarrassing. And Carly was the one person that I let in. And it was really helpful to me. And this sounds kind of bad, but I really needed someone to like download about my mom with and just say, "Oh, can you believe how embarrassing and crazy she is?" And Carly was able to like, sympathize with me. And so it helped a lot to just have someone that I could, you know, talk to about it.
Right. Well, I know for myself that I always think of with the work that I do and doing these shows, and that I was set up to have had some crazy stuff happen when I was younger, and to have some kind of resilience, some kind of gut, some kind of balls, call it whatever you wish, so that I could do this and I
Yeah.
could be this and I could, right? You agree? You feel the
Well,
same way?
you're fulfilling your life's purpose, right?
Right.
And you wouldn't have come to know that this was your life purpose, I think, if you hadn't gone through that.
Yeah, yeah, it's really, yeah, it's very interesting because all the stuff that goes on, that somehow I wasn't killed, I wasn't murdered, I didn't kill myself, I mean, I could wake up and find myself in some funky places, but
Yeah,
only so that I had something that would, right?
absolutely. I feel the same way about my
Yeah,
past, that I lived through it to be where I am now and kind of spread the word and help others.
I believe that. Carly, I would love for you to stay on longer, but our phones are burning up. There are people who want to call in, and for some reason only can take one at a time. So I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks, Carly.
much.
I'll talk to
Bye.
you later.
Bye.
Yeah.
Just listen. Keep listening.
Oh, I will.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So
Okay.
I'm gonna. All right, Heather. Heather, is she on now? Okay, Heather, come on. You can. It's your turn.
Oh,
Computers.
Heather. Yay.
Computers. 2K.
Hello?
Okay, she's there. Good. Heather.
Um, oh my gosh, hello.
Oh, you made it. You made
Can you
it,
hear
Heather.
me?
Yes. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I will have to get off the computer.
Yes. So that
Heather's
way
calling all the way from Australia.
yeah. So I think she's, are you there now?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just going to turn this down off the computer. Sorry.
No, that's
Then
okay.
I
So
can hear you.
tell us
Okay, here
who,
I am. I made it through.
perfect, perfect. So now, Heather, who are you?
Yes.
Who are you in Sia's life?
Well, Sia and I, we got to share quite an incredible life in Munich, Germany. We modeled together for many years over there. And, yeah, I was just so very fortunate to have gotten on a booking with her at one stage, and we became very fast friends. I think it took about 30 seconds.
And so, what was Sia like back then? At what age was that, by the way?
Look, we would have been probably, Sia, about 20, 21, 22.
21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what was she like then
Yeah,
when you met her?
Oh, gosh. Oh, she was just stunning as always, absolutely beautiful. And, she always just had a smile on her face. You would have never, ever suspected or known. And in fact, I never even knew. She never told me about her childhood. Every so now and then she would tell me a few little things, but I never really learned about it until she sent me her manuscript, her first one. And I was just shocked, but because I never knew. She'd never divulged any of that. You would have never guessed. She was always happy, chirpy. She just looked like the perfect Barbie doll walking in, and everybody you know, she just lit the room up because she had that beautiful smile and just that friendly personality and bubbly and always, you know, never down, ever down.
And so, you know, it's so interesting because I had this like flash when you said that she would light up a room, and I kind of had a flash like, okay, she, you don't, you don't get a life like this for no reason. You get a life like this because you've got to show the world something about how you can. I mean, for all of you that are listening, regardless of where you're listening from or how you're listening or what your life is like, take a look at this. You know, here's a young woman, a young kid living the craziest life who ends up being a model, for Pete's sakes, and being able to walk into a knowing she's pretty. First of all, how did you know you were pretty?
Sorry, I'm just having
How
some
did
phone issues here. Um, you know, people always told me I was pretty growing up. My mom always told me I was pretty. That's one thing that she was always, you know, she tried to build up my confidence. And I was tall and I was skinny, and I just had a feeling that modeling was something that I'd be able to do.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but you know, Heather really was my, gosh, like my first real, really close modeling friend, and her and I formed a bond that, you know, it was so strong that like it's never, it's always been, it's the same now, even though she lives in Australia and I'm in Canada. Our bond is just as strong now as it was when we first met. And again, you know, and it's interesting because I think I'm finding a common thread just now that I've discovered. Heather was also a girl who was very popular and very well liked and had a ton of friends, and so, you know, upbeat, and also very adverse childhood. So I seem to be attracted to women like that. Um, but she just had so much going for her, and she was a bit of a wild child too, and that really, I was very attracted to that because it brought out a side of me that I had not dared let come out because I was so afraid of being like my mother. And she actually became, in a way, a healthy outlet for that because we would go out and party and stuff. But I know I always knew I was safe with her. But it was a side of myself that I really needed to express. And and also, you know, I felt so accepted by her. Again, it was just, you know, her friendship was very, very healing for me.
oh,
So she was one of those special people along your path. Chosen, she was chosen to be on your path.
Marilyn, you know what? I
I
can't
can't.
hear
Oh,
you at all.
you can't hear me at all?
No.
No, I can't hear her either.
Huh. That's okay. Amnon's working on it. So you can't hear me either. Still?
Barely. It's like a whisper.
Barely.
Hello? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't know, but I'll try to talk louder so you can hear me.
I can hear you
Oh,
now.
that's much
Can,
better.
okay, good.
Yeah.
Whew, we're having some funny weather around, so who knows what's going on. But anyway, I think people are along our path for different reasons. When we are willing, I think, see, it seems to me you were so willing.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything.
Huh, I don't know. Nothing? Amnon's
Okay,
looking.
I had to turn my volume up. I can hear you
Okay.
now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So willing to have a
No, I
life.
can't hear anything.
I can't, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing anything. It's like muted.
All right. Hold on a second, everybody.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, that's better.
Yes.
Okay. See ya. We're going to try
Yes.
this again. It appears that you were it was so important for you to have a life that you seized every moment that you could seize and learned from whoever you could learn from and just took your took your life.
Yes, I mean, I certainly didn't think of it in those terms at the time. Um, you know, I just thought of it as finally, you know, spreading whatever wings I had away from my family and trying to figure things out for myself. But you know, I really was like a blind person stumbling through the dark looking for an object because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have any guidance. I had no mentors. I had no role models. And so, you know, Carly and then Heather became real role models and mentors for me. It was a little late in my life, but I, yeah, looking back now, certainly I was, you know, just doing whatever I could to learn and figure things out for myself with the help of my friends.
Heather, can you hear me?
Well, I was going to say
Yeah.
that she's, you know, now knowing obviously her story, her background, thinking about survival. You know, for me, it's when I think about our time in Germany, we were all flying blind then. We were, you know, we had no direction, no adult supervision. We were, you know, I came from basically a farm in Texas. You know, I had no guidance. No one in my family was doing anything like that. So we were all kind of in the same boat. But for Sia, you know, coming from that survival kind of background, I think sometimes it's an instinctual thing, and you learn it. It's different than street smarts, but it's along that ilk, you know. And we were all just searching to try and find some normality in this new world of fashion and modeling. It was so very, very different, I think, for many of us to be thrown in or thrust into that environment and just go, okay. And you just, you know, to find a friend like Sia, it was just such a godsend or gift, you know, because, wow, you found someone that you were both on that same boat, you know, trying to paddle and find your way through, you know.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you saying so, especially the street smart thing, because sometimes you don't grow up on the street. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
it's the reverse. And, you know, I never thought about that either before because I've put myself into situations that I've said, I can do this because I'm street. Well,
I'm wilderness
you're wilderness,
and
right?
Heather's farm.
Yeah, and Heather, you're farm. You know,
I'm farm.
you're farm. And in
Give
the
me a
end,
cow. I can sort the milk.
yeah, but in the end, so Heather, in the end, what does it take to make it?
You know, for me, I think it's like what you both were saying before. There's something inside us, all of us, that we're here for a purpose. We're here for a reason, and we don't get born in with a book that shows us the map or the plan of what that is. We've got to trust that instinct, that drive that's within us, and keep trusting and believing somehow through all of it in ourselves, because that's where the answers are. And if you can connect with that early on, and I think survival forces you to do that, you learn such a unique, special gift that can carry you through any diversity in life. And there can be many, as we know.
Perseverance. That's what it's all about, really.
So, can you go? I want you to go into a little more detail about what you mean by perseverance, because this is for anybody. I mean, you're listening to something very extreme, right? So,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So, Heather, if you don't mind, I'm gonna there. I think there's some other people who want to call in, and we're having some technical issues. So, I want to make sure everybody gets a chance.
Absolutely.
So, you are an angel.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thanks, sweetie. Love you.
Absolute pleasure. Love you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Continue to
Bye.
listen. So again, if anybody else wants to call in on computers, that's plural 2K voice, please feel free. Okay. So now let's talk about perseverance.
Okay. Perseverance is really what has gotten me through everything. Those moments where you feel like you want to give up, totally normal, totally fine, just don't do it. You know, that's what I learned. I mean, I persevered for decades to get this life. When I wrote my book, it took me 6 years to write it. It was rejected by every publisher in the world, basically. But I persevered. I rewrote it again and again and again. It's now a bestseller here in Canada, and it's doing well in the States too. So, I can't overstate enough how important it is to just not give up on what you know you want and what you believe is, what will fulfill you. And sometimes it can be so frustrating and so disheartening when it feels so far away. I remember, one of my darkest times was when I split up with my second husband, and I was in my, late 30s, and I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, I went through that really, really traumatic, difficult childhood. I fought tooth and nail to become a model and to do well at it. I had some things that really weren't working for me. I've had my teeth fixed, but at the time, my obviously I didn't have braces when I was a child. My teeth were crooked, and I was told, your teeth are going to be a big problem as a model, and they were. But I found ways around it, and I still, was able to do it. So I fought very hard to be a model, to be successful. I ended up doing very well at it. And so I was like, did I really go through all of this and try so hard just to be now in my late 30s and it's all falling apart again? And, what am I supposed to do? But I persevered, and I thought, no, I have a life that I want, and I'm going to get it, and I'm not going to stop until I do. And I didn't, and I've done it.
Well,
So anyone can do it. Really, if you just got to stick with it.
it's amazing because maybe I needed to hear you say that today because I'm a go-getter.
Uh-huh.
I manage to have things, work out some way, somehow, some shape or form. I find myself in places like with people with multiple degrees and I'm there and I'm really good. All
So,
the same, but it's not to have a benchmark. Sia is going to become my new benchmark.
oh, you're so sweet.
And that says a lot. Thank you. Because you are quite the benchmark. So for anybody that's tuning in and has just tuned in, Sia has an incredible story. She has an incredible book that I highly recommend people go out and read so she can shed a lot of light on your life. But she had a crazy childhood, brought up with, grandparents and a teenage mom, pot, nudity in the wilderness, crazy, crazy life. Didn't have anything. Was in a bed with her mother while her mother was having sex. Oh my God. Can you just imagine? The worst of things. And but look at her. She's in a beautiful home in a beautiful kitchen. She has 3 children. She has a husband. She has a career. She's written a book. She's writing a second book. Um, heck.
I'm living my dream. I
Yeah.
am. I really am.
Like voila. It ain't
Yeah.
magic. Oh, we have somebody else on the phone. Hello.
Hello.
And who might I ask are we speaking to?
This is Shannon, Sia's very, very good friend, Shannon Nearing.
Shannon,
Hey,
yay.
Shannon. So,
Hi, guys.
hi. So where are
I
you? Go
mistakenly
ahead.
thought it was between 1 and 2, so I'm just tuning in now.
That's okay. You made it.
So,
Good.
so tell us about you. Where are you in the friendship line here?
Sia and I went to high school together, but I was 2 grades ahead of her, and so didn't know her very well, but had heard about her because she's this big international model, and there weren't too many of those in my high school. In fact, she was the only one. And so I had to check her out and see who this big supermodel was. So that's when I first knew she existed. And then we were reunited again, almost, gosh, what would you say, Sia, like 8 years ago, 10
Something
years
like
ago?
7. Yeah.
7, 8 years ago, yeah. And we were in a park, and I thought I'd tell that story, but only if you want me to.
Sure.
Okay.
It's a great story.
So Sia, we never hung out or anything in high school, but like I said, I knew who she was, and I did think she was very pretty, but she seemed very quiet, and I thought she was either aloof and perhaps snobbish because of her fancy career, or maybe just really shy. So I couldn't tell. And then years and years later, I'm in a park with my new baby and my other son, who's a couple years older, and I see this beautiful blonde woman is looking at me. And I kept wondering, I'm like, is she looking at me? Is she looking at my kids? Do I know her? Does she think I'm hot? I don't know. And of course, I was very flattered because she's really, really a knockout, as you can see. And then all of a sudden she walks up to me, and I'm like, "Ooh, what's going on here?" And she goes, "Are you Shannon Nearing?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am. How do you know? How do you know?" And she's like, "We went to high school together. I'm Sia." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I totally remember you." And anyway, we started gabbing, and within about 5 minutes, we figured out that we were both writing books at the time. And she told me the name of hers, and I instantly knew that she had it, that she had a story, that she had a book, that she had a success on her hands, because just the little bit I understood and had gleaned, and the title of the book, North of Normal, which she had way back when, I just knew we're winners. So that's when we got to know each other, and we were instant besties and hung out all the time.
That's wonderful. It's amazing how things happen, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And you know, Shannon, I remember, I'll never forget her words. She read my manuscript. We'd only been hanging out for a couple of months. And she said, "This is going to be so big. You know, you've got an incredible story, and everyone's going to want to talk about it." And I was like, "Yeah, I doubt it, you know." But those words stuck with me in particular for years and years and years as I struggled to write that book and get it published. And so she was so encouraging of my creative endeavors. And also,
I was
and
right
again,
behind you.
Uh-huh.
and again, you know, just thinking about this whole theme we have going of my friends, Shannon was another girl who, you know, in high school, she was so popular and everyone wanted to be her friend. And she had these big parties at her house on the weekend. Of course, I was never invited because I was only in grade 10. But, you know, and she really didn't know me. But I used to look at her in the hallways and think, "Oh, Shannon Nearing, she's so popular and cool." You know, it's like I could never be friends with someone like that. So when I ran into her in the park that day, I was still quite insecure, you know, and for me to go up to the most popular girl in school and say, you know, "Want to be my friend? Can we hang out?" was like a really big deal for me. And her acceptance has been a very healing friendship for me. Again, I'm very, very blessed.
Oh, I'm so happy to be there for you. And I wasn't that popular, Marilyn, just so you know. Maybe in Sia's mind, you know how
Maybe.
things get bigger.
Maybe.
But no, it's been such a unique friendship because Sia and I almost think alike. We really do. We have the same opinion on so many matters. It's really fun, and I think that people can't be. The most interesting people in my life are the ones who've gone through a lot of crap. And Sia's gone through more crap than anyone I know. So that ranks her right up there with, like, she's the most interesting. She's also the most grounded. And you know, a really good ear for me. And that's why I try to be a good ear for her as well, because I want to reciprocate that. Because once you've lived a life like Sia has, you know, the trivialities of life become silly, and that's where we completely agree, Sia and I. We don't have a lot of time for BS. Wouldn't you agree, Sia?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely have that in common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of people who are living in, you know, yuck. And hearing this story, you know, it is so hopeful to them. And also knowing that there are people along the way that are there. You know, Sia, you didn't have any brothers or sisters, right?
No.
So you were an only child, and not just an only child, but probably in a lot of cases lonely, I would think. Were you lonely growing up?
You know, I don't remember being lonely,
Okay.
and that's a funny thing. I was so my own best friend. You know, I was so used to being on my own that I had my book, I had my dolls, I had, you know, and I was good. I was okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I just want to say really quickly, my husband's been trying to call
Okay,
in.
let's.
I think he's
Okay.
having a tough time, but he
Okay.
can just step in beside me
Oh
too.
yes, definitely.
Okay, let's do that.
Oh yeah, love that. Yeah, come on, Remy. That's how you pronounce it, right, Remy? Come on, Remy. We've been looking for you.
I'll squat down.
Is
We've been
Shannon
waiting
staying
for
on
you.
the line?
Yeah,
Hello.
Shannon.
Yeah, do I get off or what do I do?
Well, I would say it'd probably be good to get off unless
Okay.
Sia has something else that she wants. Is
Just
that good?
love you, babe.
Okay, just in
Love you,
case.
babe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon,
Love
for
you
being
too.
here.
You're so welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Remy, welcome.
Hello.
So what's it like being married to Sia?
Pretty amazing, as you might imagine.
Tell us, I mean, because she's quite a woman.
Yeah, she is. I mean, it's you. I think the biggest thing is never taking it for granted because she does a lot of stuff. She's got this sort of perpetual drive to do stuff, and it's pretty amazing. And also, I mean, she works on so many fronts. Like, the fact that I mean, if she's not doing edits on a book or doing something else, she'll start a project like making things. And that's one of the things where Shannon comes in really well. She always has lots of projects to start Sia on. Early on, that was almost a problem because it needed to keep focused on her book.
Uh-huh.
But no, she's just a perpetual motion machine. And I think the thing that's a little bit deceptive for me is that I often forget how much energy and time it takes for her to deal with the kids. So, because I'm not here during the day, I'm working most of the time. So that's one of those things where, like, every now and then she runs out of energy, usually because of the kids.
Well, she's normal.
because the kids.
She's south of normal now.
Yeah. Kids bring us all down to normal.
Yeah. So, Remy, what have you? I mean, from a woman like that. I mean, there are lots of people who are listening who feel very powerful and strong, and then we have people, I'm sure, that are listening who are not. We have people who are listening who don't have a strong husband or a strong support system. I'm sure. I mean, I actually have a very strong support system. My husband would be doing just what you are doing. Well, what would you say to the immediate world that's listening? I know I asked you. There's a lot of questions I asked you all in that one little lump slum. But the first thing that comes to your mind in shedding light about breaking free or about living with a woman who's been through all this, what would you say?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, when I met Sia, I didn't think of her as weak or frail or battered or anything like that. She's very much who she is. And I think the first time I met her, she was shaking, which was quite funny. But that was because we were both very nervous to meet each other. I mean, she's so much her own person. And I think, and that's the thing that I found about her all the way through, is she knows so much about who she is. And that's where her strength comes from. Part of her difficulty with her childhood has been resolving who she is with what her childhood was and who her family was. I do think the writing process, I think this whole journey she's been on with that has really helped her. I mean, just putting it down, whether it be a diary or notes or something like that, allows it to become something which is more objective that you can point to, rather than something that you're in the middle of, especially about a family and stuff like that is so raw and emotional. Once she got it down there, then, I mean, even when she handed me her first the manuscript that she handed me, it wasn't her first one, but it was an iteration. But she sort of handed it to me and she said, "This is me, and I want you to read this before, we go too much further." And it was great that it was like so much insight into her, but it was insight into her background, and it gave me an idea of why she would react in certain ways to certain things and how tough it had been. But really, it wasn't her. Her was in front of me. So, I mean, that was, for me, I mean, yeah, that was pretty emotional to read it.
So, Sia, there's so many questions to ask. I mean, there's so many I've been wanting to ask you all through the show, but I really think who you are, not just, well, where's your father now, but who you are, as a human being and shedding light on this planet, for people who are struggled with so many things or just need a little bit more push. You've mentioned some things, but was it writing that was so important to you?
Writing was incredibly important to me. Telling my story was incredibly important to me. And though I started it off as my own way of trying to understand my family and work through the issues that I had with them, it ultimately became a journey to really try to help other people who felt like outsiders, because most people look at me and they're like, how could she have ever felt like an outsider? She's got a great life. And but I felt painfully, horribly like an outsider. And so it's become a project for me of like, listen, you're not alone. People who feel like they will never fit in with their family, with society, with, they can have that acceptance, but it comes from accepting yourself first. And so that's my mission and my journey right now, to let people know that they can do it. They can do whatever they want. They've just got to stick to their dreams, and just don't give up.
And surround yourself with people who are supportive and loving.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I could never, ever have gotten that book out into the world without Remy. He was so supportive. He never once said to me, do you think maybe this is kind of like not going to happen and you should just like give it up? He was always like, no, keep writing, keep writing. He'd take the kids on the weekends so I could write. He believed in me. He's been so supportive. And he's been a really like, kind of normal rock in my life that I so badly needed. And we balance each other out really well. So I'm so fortunate, to have him.
So, and I think I mentioned this during the beginning of the show, but I don't remember. This is the first time I have posted a book from an author that we were having on the show that somebody actually had already read it. That was part of my circle on Facebook. That has never,
Great.
ever happened. Never. So that just tells you, everybody out there, that this is a book that you are going to want to read, should read, go, share, give it as a gift, because,
Yes.
it's important. So why don't you tell everybody, where to find the book and all that kind of stuff, your website, all of that. Here's the book.
Sure. Well, in the States, there's the book. I believe it's available at any bookseller, Barnes and Noble. It's available on Amazon, pretty much anywhere you can buy a book. My website is ciaperson.com. That's CEAPERSON.com. Tons of information there about my book, about where to buy books, all sorts of interviews that I've done. Also book club. If you're reading my book for a book club, you can go on there and get discussion questions. And my second book is a follow-up to North of Normal. The working title right now is Nearly Normal, and it will fill in a lot of gaps, answer a lot of questions that any reader may have from the first book, and that will be released by HarperCollins in spring of 2017.
Perfect. So in closing, Remy, words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom from me on Sia. I mean,
on anything. Sia, this life you have together, anything you've
my
observed.
word of wisdom is wait for the person that's right for you. Because I did, and she showed up. And yeah, because I have to say also, like, the trend, I listened to her other friends talking about it. And I don't know. I always felt like an outsider too, growing up. So, and I think that's how Sia and I also bonded, because neither of us had any sort of entitlement. Like neither of us felt like we were entitled to anything, really.
That's very true.
But we also we also knew what we were looking for. So it doesn't mean you're going to get what you're looking for just because you're looking for it, but don't feel entitled to it. So as much as you can, it's a balance. Like if you get too cocky, you get knocked down. If you feel too weak, hopefully someone's there to prop you up, and you do the right things to make yourself feel stronger. But life's a balance that way. And with Sia, it's been great because we found that balance, and you don't find that with everybody, right? You do find that with important friends, yes. And hopefully with the person you're meant to be with for the rest of your life, yes. As well.
When I go to do something, that I feel is a stretch in some way, shape, or form for myself, and I'll always look at my husband and I'll say, "It's words of wisdom," and he'll give it to me. I mean, he'll give me a word, he'll give me a line, he'll give me something. And what Remy just said was very important. When you be victim, that's when you might as well call it a day.
Absolutely. So true. And that's something we really have strongly in common. We can't stand victims, and it's just we don't believe in, nobody's a victim.
No.
You pick yourself up and you do what you got to do,
Exactly. If
Yeah.
Sia, if you had, taken on the identity of victim, you never would have gotten where you are.
No, of course
No.
not. And
No.
nobody ever will until
No.
they release that mindset.
Absolutely. So when you talk about breaking free, you talk about freedom from that victim conversation, because in
Yes.
victim, you're always going to feel entitled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And taking control and just,
Yep.
don't be a victim, people.
Don't be a victim. Don't be.
Sure.
And so we're going to have Sia back here when she's close to releasing her next book, or maybe even before then, if she's
Certainly,
willing. Yeah.
I'd love to, Marilyn.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back, and because I know that there's so many more things to just talk about with this. There's so many so many things you want to talk about with this woman.
I
So
love talking. So
good,
go
because
for hours.
I love talking and listening. So I want to thank the both of you for
Thank you.
being here today and helping to set this up, and just being the people that you are for other people to see. So thank you
Our
very
pleasure.
much.
Thanks.
Yes, and Sia,
you.
I just you still got so much to share, so I really appreciate what you've shared already, and the honesty, because that's people. It's such it's surreal, so it's important.
Yeah, it is a little surreal.
It is.
I wouldn't argue with you.
No. So I want to thank everybody out there that's been listening. I want to thank all of the caller-inners. It's been great to have you all here. You've definitely taught me a whole lot. So I thank you for that so much. Come,
Thank you.
be back here next week for another great story. Sia, a word, 2 words in closing. Anything?
Go for your dreams. That's
Yeah.
so corny, but
Go for your dreams. That's it. So thank you all. We'll see you all very soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.